Hi, my name is Herbert Rexinger. I have a long close friend of mine, Mark Anthony Cook. He has something real important to say.
Thanks, Herb. Hello, everyone. Before I convey solution for the war crisis, I have a question for presidential candidates that is designed to put them on the spot. If you were to be elected President of the United States of America, do you feel capable of negotiating a truce with the enemies of the United States and Israel? And if willing, will you please shed some light on the subject? Since I declined on a buddy's advice to have a well-endowed hottie recite the Proclamation, I'm counting on at least you ladies, for starters, in hearing me out. Thank you. Without further delay, a citizen's proclamation for peace. My fellow citizens in the US of A, we must do more than just cast the vote. We need to determine what's going to be accomplished as well. Here's the deal. The international community of our brothers and sisters have their eye on us, and it's time for this leading nation to live up to the same standards being demanded of others. It's now that simple. Consider this. Historically, mankind has warred successfully, yet has always failed to keep the peace. Humanity is ready to change for the better. In the US of A, we begin change for the better by way of cleaning up our own act first, meaning we hold our leaders accountable before the eyes of the entire world community openly for all to see. Our nation has created a problem for the rest of the world far beyond our call for national security, and it's time to get our act together on all levels and in every area. It is our duty as citizens to come to an understanding with each other here in our own country. For we must first come to an understanding with one another if we are to ever come to an understanding with our enemies. And this first requires each of us agreeing on how we can come to an understanding with our enemies. Hence, the need for a simple plan and lots of helping hands. It is not enough that each of us become a better person and all of our problems will go away. Each of us needs to decide with conviction and collectively apply added effort. We are usually grateful of our personal moments of peace, and as a race entirety, we forever pursue lasting peace, the old pursuit of happiness throughout our eternal journey. Many are the ways of the peaceful moment, and many are the people who desire peace amongst ourselves most of all. And let's face it, we can usually create and keep our own peace if it were not for others disturbing the peace. And in case you've forgotten, this is wherein lies the problem. The handling of disturbing the peace and preventative measures enacted to ensure peace, and the importance of understanding what makes people unpeaceful to begin with. Realizing that most people's personal problems are actually connected to the larger collection of other people's problems forces me to rationalize that merely each person simply becoming a better person is not going to be enough, ever. Which brings me back to the point of there needing to be an immediate sense of accountability where all eyes are on the ball. Simply put, in order to realize an improved national and even international reality, minus all the unnerving conflict, there need be, in the least, a fathomable strategy, a workable plan, and widespread knowledge of the steps to be enacted, notwithstanding willingness, commitment, and persistence. Regardless the current immature state of affairs between a number of nations, I see a world of people ready and capable of creating lasting peace. For so long a time, we human beings have brought out the worst in each other, more so than we have brought out the best. This simple recognition of others bringing many of us down more effectively than we bringing ourselves up enables the ability to focus more realistically on the task demanding our collective attention. What is it going to take to make the peace come easier for all of us sooner? It starts with the bigger picture, of which becomes ignored when and where we feel helpless and out of touch. And this results in becoming consumed by our micro worlds of daily function and routine. As it be, here, now, we begin. Joining together, our individual efforts to ensure that what needs to be done gets done instead of waiting for someone else to come along and make things better, to address and solve the larger and more complicated issues such as war itself. It's the #1 menu item, and working together as one people to bring about peace is our current meal ticket. In order to come to an understanding with our enemies, we must first recognize the reasons others are dissatisfied with our actions to the extent of war. The choices we make throughout life most certainly decide how we feel about life, and as well determines how we see the world around us to a very large extent, regardless of other people's problems affecting any one of us at any given moment. I say so because it is imperative that each of us learn to recognize on a personal level that we can ultimately become our own worst enemy. And it is now essential that all citizens realize that the actions of our nation have made our country our own worst enemy. From a personal standpoint, I've learned to empower myself long before I seek to place blame elsewhere. And from a patriotic standpoint, I've learned to recognize the faults of my own nation before I are to start pointing fingers elsewhere. I've begun by making clear the fact that we need to first look ourselves over and act accordingly before we can do anything about what is upsetting others. Enough is already realized, and I now call on students to start preparing short speeches. Risking defeat to a global Islamic extremist movement is no longer an option on the table. In order to end the mayhem and disruptions in Iraq and prevent further attacks against U.S. citizens, allies, and interests, the United States needs to come clean and acknowledge that its invasion into Iraq began illegally and under false pretense. I'll explain why. Long before any society of people were to determine what's best for another society of people, we have to first respect their history of evolution and understand all the interior and exterior contributing circumstances that constitute the current state of their evolving social reality, including the way in which they handle their grievances. Appropriate change does not occur for any tribe of people until those particular family members are collectively ready and prepared to institute those changes by whatever means they see fit. Leaders of our nation went to war with 2 other nations recently for reasons of vengeance and power, having heavily gambled in Iraq, and are losing the very front on the global war itself at the cost of innocent lives, now reaching into the tens of thousands considering the entire effect. The wound continues to dig deeper as the leaders of our nation continue to insult the world community by persisting to act as though we are doing the citizens of those 2 nations a huge favor. Thanks but no thanks had citizens been queried knowing full well the possible repercussions, and no way in hell would have been the rest of the world's response had mere regime changes been proposed by way of force. The time for accountability is now.